Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm 𝙃𝙤𝙗𝙗. We are looking at health, wellness, and social protection in Tobago. To do so, we are joined by someone who, for their doctoral dissertation, looked at social and cultural factors affecting specific health issues in Tobago. Now, her tertiary degrees in behavioral and community health sciences, even before a THA secretary position, make us very happy to be joined by Dr. Faith B. Israel. Welcome, Dr. B. Israel. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to start off asking about you celebrating individuals within the system. I see you spent some time with midwives recently.
Certainly, and thanks for having me on this program this evening. Yes, so yesterday or maybe the day before, we had a celebration with the midwives, and we know that they are an integral part of our healthcare system. They are the ones who ensure that our mommies and our babies are born safely. So that was an interesting and enjoyable celebration we had with them yesterday.
And as someone who was a midwife helped to usher me into this world, so I'm a little partial to midwives. One of my four grannies is a midwife. But it's one thing to spend time with people and celebrate them. Yes, you're right there. But it's another thing to literally show people the money. So in terms of TARHA structure strengthening, the last two times we spoke with the chief sec, he said this is something that was going to be looked at as low-hanging fruit, as things to do within a short period of time. So what are contracts looking like right now?
Well, you know, they are looking on the up and up. I actually got a couple posts the other day from a couple of our nurses who indicated that they had actually signed their contracts. And what we did, what happened over the last 2 years or so was in essence a situation where because of COVID, the TRHA hired several short-term individuals on short-term. So these are nurses, doctors, or other health professionals. I guess like everybody else, hoping that COVID would have ended in a month, 2 or 3. Of course, 2 years later, we're still treating with it. So one of the things we decided to do very early in our tenure was to give people that kind of security. You know that if you don't have a contract that says you are working with an organization for more than a year, more than 2 years, you can't do anything with it. You can't go to the bank. You can't get anything reliably done with it. So we insisted on ensuring that we give those individuals who were on those month-to-month or 3-month, what we classify as short-term contracts, we would give them nothing less than 3 years. And that is what we've started doing it. I'm very happy about that. A lot of them have actually started reaching out to me because they have signed, sealed, and delivered on those contracts.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask about. What kind of feedback are you getting from these individuals who, as opposed to saying, okay, well, this is short term coming up again, they now have 3 years in order to plan things, to put things in motion. What kind of feedback are you getting from them?
Well, you know, they're really saying that this is allowing them to breathe a sigh of relief because you really, you know, when you have a short-term contract, you don't know what is going to happen next. With a situation like this, they're in a position where they can actually go to the bank. They're in a position where they can, you know, possibly look at getting a mortgage. They're in a position to do simple things that many of us take for granted. So they are very, very happy. Several of them have messaged me privately. Some have even messaged on Facebook indicating very publicly, hey, we are so thankful that you guys actually kept to this promise. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, you know, this is something that we did a promise that it would happen. This is something that in my mind, it took a little longer than that it should have, but we are getting there because we are going through the entire process, ensuring that we dot our I's and cross our T's. So it is happening a little slower than I would personally wish. I wish, you know, within a month we could have said, here's your contract, but we're doing it the right way, which is ensuring that we follow all of the rules.
And I think when persons are a little more settled in terms of they know where their resources are coming from, they can give more of themselves. And with that, they're able to focus a little more on primary care. So what does primary care look like specifically in Tobago from where you sit, Dr. B. Israel?
Certainly. Well, you know, you are right. When people are a little more satisfied, then we can ask them to do more. We are planning to focus on primary care because we recognize that for quite a while, we have not been really doing what we need to do to prevent people from getting sick on one level or getting them immediately as they are getting into the healthcare system. So our aim really is to focus on primary care. Primary care is in essence what happens at our health centers, and we are going to be working towards having them classified as wellness centers. So we're going to focus on the education, focus on them coming in and getting screening for blood pressure and sugar and cholesterol and those things so that they can start acting on what needs to happen for them to not get any sicker. In many instances, if we catch them at pre-diabetes and they do what is necessary, then they don't need to get into the diabetes and then have to treat with the consequences of diabetes. So that is our aim right now, to focus on primary care, ensure that we actually get people all of the information that they need to act, and allow them the opportunities to start doing some of the things we're talking about, exercising more, eating differently. So, having some cooking classes showing that, hey, you really don't need all of that sugar and that oil to make the browning. We can actually make browning a different way so that it is healthier, so that we can all live a little longer.
Take care, don't taste as sweet, Dr. B. Israel. and that is actually one of the things that I wanted to speak to you about, looking at the fact that you have a history not just of saying, okay, well, straight on either white or black health issues, but looking at how social issues, looking at how cultural issues factor into getting that message across, dealing with policy and basically getting all hands on deck. What are some of those things that you're looking at with regard to taking those social and cultural factors and bringing them into health issues, primary care, and even what's the difference between the nuance? What's the nuance, the distinction between health centers and wellness centers?
Certainly. And what we've identified is the fact that we all live in a world where everything that is happening around us affects us. What does that mean? If I do not have the money to buy healthy foods, it means I'll probably eat the cheap, unhealthy food. If my streets are not well lit, it means I'm probably not going to get up, and I'm probably not going to go exercising, because I think, it's dangerous out there in the dark, or if there aren't things like sidewalks, it means I'm probably not going to exercise on the road, because you then have to then jump out of the way because a car and a truck is coming. This is really an understanding that when we are asking people to make healthy lifestyle changes, that there are factors that influence all of those changes. And therefore, when we are looking at health, we need to look at health holistically. Just giving somebody the information saying you must do this and that is not the end all and be all. We have to look at the person as a human being, and based on their circumstances, then we can allow them to make small incremental changes that ultimately will result in a large shift in their health status. So as something as simple as just reframing how we think about these health centers. We think about health centers as a place you go when you're sick. Let's start thinking about the wellness centers, a place you go to ensure that you stay well, a place to go to ensure that even if you may have some kind of non-communicable disease, pre-diabetes, your blood pressure probably going up a little, you can go, you can get the information, you can do the test, and then we can work with you to ensure that we bring it back down to what is classified as normal or within the healthy ranges. So it's that kind of mind shift that we are working towards to ensure that people stay healthy. And when we say healthy, we mean all facets of health.
And we continue the conversation when we return from this break. We are speaking with Dr. Faith B. Israel. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are going in depth, focusing on health, specifically in Tobago, with the Secretary for Health, Wellness and Social Protection, Dr. Faith B. Israel. And one of the things that you spoke about in terms of looking at health and wellness from a holistic sort of view, Dr. B. Israel, community resilience, what does that, how does that play a role in saying, okay, well, the entire community is going forward to where they're supposed to be? What does that look like, and how are you trying to address it?
Certainly. Well, one of the things we did when we came into power in December last year, it feels like much longer than just December last year, is we actually changed the name of the division that I now lead. The name of the division is called Health, Wellness and Social Protection. And one of the reasons we changed the social protection part is because we believe that individuals need to be put in a position where they can withstand shocks. What are shocks? Shocks are really life changes, changes in your life that can affect every aspect of what you do. So, we just went through 2 years of COVID. That includes having someone possibly die, having the breadwinner lose their job as a result of the public health measures. Those are what we consider shocks. And to ensure that we are able to treat with shocks, we have to build that resilience on the individual level, the family level, and the community level. And that is the direction that the division is going in as we restructure the division so that we have all of the resources in-house, or so that we can partner with those outside to ensure that it works, so that we can build within our communities that kind of resilience, so that, hey, if something bad happens, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We had put a plan in place just in case this happens, or we now know how to pivot to get a new job, or to start rethinking about how else we can make money. Those are the kinds of conversations we're having in the division to ensure that when people come to us, they leave being able to be more resilient.
And how are those conversations going? I know sometimes some individuals can be resistant to change. So if you're there and you're all right, it wasn't too bad. You're making them work now. You're making them doing something a little different now. What is that like? What is that process like?
Well, the good thing is that the workers, the individuals who are working with me, so the social workers and so forth, they are actually very interested in this kind of change, because they understand that having a client come in needing social support, and within a year or two being able to say to that client, hey, bye-bye, you don't need to come in anymore because you are now in a much better place, is actually what they went to school to do. So they love the idea of shifting the direction to ensure that we have clients, that we have a beginning and end date with those clients, because they do not need support for the rest of their lives. That means we have done our job, and we've done our job well in the division, in the Department of Social Protection. So it means not just giving the grants. Yes, so we are going to give the grants. We're going to help with food. We're going to help with rent. We're going to help with medical expenses and that kind of thing. But we are also going to ensure that we learn about how to deal with our finances. We are going to ensure that we figure out how to get that resume in the best shape, so that if you are applying for another job, you are going to get the best job possible. So it's doing those kinds of things that takes a little bit of work on our end, takes a little bit of work on the end of the clients as well, but coming together, the ultimate result is one where everybody benefits, and we all want that.
And I think being able to have individuals who are more empowered to focus and be able to support themselves is also one of those components of primary health care. So I can see how this kind of ties in on a very holistic level. But policies and procedures, clear, specific, saying, okay, well, we're going to get individuals from point A to point B. Who are some of the stakeholders? How are you all engaging? How are you all getting that done?
Right. Well, what we recognize coming in is that we've kind of been doing things a certain way before, where we were not sure who is responsible for doing what. We were not necessarily sure that when we get from A, B, C, D, exactly how to get those points connected. So we've actually been working very closely with the social support staff, with our NGOs, for example, to say, hey, okay, so let's say we have a domestic violence case. What do we do? Who do we call? What is the best way to get this person support immediately? Where does the police come in? Where do the NGOs come in? Do we need to find housing for that person immediately, or can we get that somewhere else? We've actually been having those kinds of sit down, those kinds of conversations, where in many instances we have difficult conversations. We are able to say to the police, hey, you guys not as responsive as you should be, or we are saying to my staff, you guys have kind of, you're numb a little bit to some of the wants and needs of the client. So we need to figure out why our social support staff are a little bit numb, so that we can treat with them. So those are the kinds of conversations we're having, and we are documenting it. So we are rolling out policies that include, for example, case conferencing. What does that mean? Anyone who comes into the Tobago House of Assembly who needs a social support, that social support staff, the social worker, or whoever it is, should be able to say, okay, this person came to me for food, but I recognize that they have a child, and that child needs health, that child needs some kind of help. relating to education. Let me then call the social worker at education so that we can sit down together and figure out what is the best way to have this client deal with all of their needs. Instead of what used to happen before is that they would have, they dealt with me for food, then we send them over by education for education stuff, then we send them over by settlements because they need a grant for housing. Instead, we are going to be the ones doing that work in the background so that the client doesn't have to go running all over the place. So it's policies like those that we have been working on to ensure that the client gets the best service possible.
And I see we have just under 3 minutes, but I like the fact that you also speak about focusing on staff well-being so that everyone moves forward. But policy is one thing, and yes, it's good to have policy that is working, but I see you recently facilitated at an event where the topic in question was coping with menopause. So marrying that policy with still being personable, approachable. And sometimes people might say, oh, you reach and you get biggish. But how important is it to remain rooted, having fellowship, in addition to working hard in an office, creating good policy to implement?
That part is critical because that is where you hear the real stories, and that is where you understand what is actually happening. I have a policy where, for example, instead of using the elevator in my office, I pass through the office that relates to my social support staff, and I say, hey, what's going on today? How are you feeling? That kind of thing, so that I am able to hear the real answers, because you very frequently don't hear the real answers when you're having those official meetings. So yes, having interactions like I did the other day with that church. As a matter of fact, that was a church who said to me they want to know about menopause. And those are things that I do frequently. I deal with churches, I deal with community groups, I deal with young people having those discussions, because that is where you would really know what the real needs are on the ground. And that would then allow me to go back into the office, create the policies, or ensure that the policies that we think are working are actually working. That is where that connection takes place.
And I want to go back to it because you started, but in terms of being able to focus, making sure that staff are appreciated, staff well-being is something that is looked at. What are some of those initiatives? What are some of the efforts that are addressing that focus?
Yeah, so our staff are some of the hardest working members that I know, especially those who've had to be the helping hand during the pandemic, the helping hand when everybody else was falling apart. We were still asking our social workers to do their job. We were still asking all of our doctors, our medical professionals to do their jobs. So we needed to ensure that all of them are good. That is why, for example, we started with that contract thing. You should not have put your life in jeopardy for the last 2 years to then have to be worried about whether you will continue getting employment. Same thing is happening over at social support. We are ensuring that, all of the staff needs, all of the employment needs, those are well taken care of. I actually said to my social support workers the other day that, we're having you doing all of this work with policies. When we're done, maybe we should have a spa day. Maybe we should have something like that where, everyone just is able to relax because you've been working so hard. Those are the kind of things we need to do to make sure that they know that we love them, we care for them, we understand that their work is hard work, and we are willing to support them at every level to get all of our clients, our internal and external clients, the help that is necessary.
And we want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing, Dr. Faith B. Israel, Secretary for Health, Wellness and Social Protection, getting a little focus on what is happening specifically in Tobago with regard to health and well-being. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, 𝙃𝙤𝙗𝙖𝙜. Thank you so much for joining us.